Do you ever struggle with accomplishing the changes that you want to make in your life? Well, if so, today we're going to talk about a principle that will help you implement and make those changes. And that principle is consistency. To begin, the first thing you need to remember is that everything you do in your life, you do for a reason. It's your thoughts and your beliefs that drive your behavior and that give you the outcomes that you have in your life. So the real question that you first need to look at is, why do you want to change? What is the goal or the outcome that you believe that this change will give you? And it may be that that belief is false. And if that belief is false, then it doesn't really even matter, because you may achieve the change that you want, but you still won't get the outcome that you want, which then just leads to frustration, leads to questioning of yourself and why you do the things that you do, and more doubt in yourself. So typically, the reason that people want change in their life is because they're unhappy or unsatisfied with where they're at. So think about that in your own situation. When you want to make change, is it because you're unhappy with the way things are, or unsatisfied, or you believe that by making the change, things will be better? The first thing to remember is that you get to choose. So that's one of those principles that govern this world in which we live, choice. So you get to choose right now, with things exactly the way they are, to be happy with the way that they are. If you can achieve that state of happiness, then as you make the changes, you'll continue to experience happiness and can even experience deeper levels of happiness. But until you can be happy right here or right now, then you won't be happy even if you do make those changes. So understanding that is key. But now let's talk about what are some of the things that prevent us from making the changes that we want. So there's two main things that we need to look at when we're wanting to make change. There are external things, and then there are internal things. So it may be that you're unhappy with the way things are in your environment or in your relationships, and you may be focused on the other person or the other people or the circumstance or the situation. It's really important to remember that you have no control over those things. That's another principle, that principle of control. You don't control others. You can't control others. The only thing you can control is your conscious thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. Everything else is influence. So by understanding that, your approach to changing those things outside of yourself will be different, because your approach won't be to control or to make those things happen. You'll realize that if it's another person, that they have control over themselves. They are the only ones that can make that change, and understand that just as you do things for a reason, they do things for a reason. So when you understand that, again, your approach with them is going to be different, because it's about educating or informing them, trying to, one, if you can seek to understand where they're coming from and why they see it the way they see it, they may be more receptive to listening to you and to see why you see it the way that you do. Here's the truth about this type of change is oftentimes we end up in kind of a no pass where we can't come up with a solution. And it's because both sides are so convinced that they're right and that they're hanging on to their beliefs, and they're unwilling to even consider another person's belief. It may be that as you're seeking to understand where they're coming from, there might be something that you don't understand. And with that new insight, you may have an aha where you understand it differently, and it changes your belief about the whole thing. Again, if you're willing to do that, the other person may be more willing to understand where you're coming from as well. And it may be that you come up together with a new solution that neither one had thought about, that is better than the solution that you had before. So that's the way to approach change if it's outside of you, if it's external. The other part of change is it's internal. So there are things about ourselves, about our behaviors, about who we are as an individual, the way that we do things. It could be the way that we respond to things, and we recognize that what we are doing is not working. It's not giving us the outcomes in life that we want. Show you real quickly. So if this box represents our outcomes, then we have to look at, well, what is it in life that drives or creates our outcomes? And that's our behaviors. But our behaviors are driven or created by our beliefs, and our beliefs are created by our thoughts. Now, the challenge with this is that we get conditioned throughout our life to behave in certain ways because it gives us the outcomes that we want. When we're no longer getting the outcomes that we want, so that's no longer working, and we want to change our behavior, the challenge is if we've been conditioned that oftentimes we act without thinking. Think about when, if you know how to drive and you're driving a car and you're driving home, but your mind is somewhere else. So it's the subconscious part of your brain that's driving the vehicle. And if you're not paying attention, have you ever missed the turn that goes to your house? Or you're driving somewhere else and you miss the turn and you're down the road a ways where you finally realize, oh, I meant to go here, and you have to turn around. So that's what we call autopilot. And 90% of the time we're on autopilot. So let's say that we make a decision that we want to change our behavior. Here's the other thing that's interesting and important to understand. Do you know what your average span of attention is? The length of time that you can stay focused on one thing? It's about 7 seconds. And that's true for all of us. So if I make a decision that I'm going to change my behavior, I'll remember that for about 7 seconds. And then my mind is going to get caught up in something else. And then I'll be triggered and something will happen. And I will just react with the old behavior that I've always done. So if I want to change my behaviors, I need to go back and I need to look at, well, what are my thoughts and beliefs that are driving that behavior? Because if I'm behaving in a way that is not getting me the outcome that I want, there's something incorrect in my thoughts and beliefs. They're not based on truth or principle. So unless I'm able to change my thoughts and beliefs, then these old behaviors will just continue. So here's the key, and here's where consistency comes in to this whole idea of change. Oftentimes, we're about achieving a certain outcome in life because we have a belief that this outcome is going to make us happy or help us be happy. So think about that in your own life. Again, why do you do the things that you do? This isn't really what it's about. It's about your thoughts and your beliefs, because your thoughts and beliefs are a true representation of who you are as a person. So in order for you to implement change, you need to change as a person, because as we change who we are, and again, that's connected to your thoughts and to your beliefs. So at an internal level, as you begin to change how you see the world and your beliefs about the outcomes in life, because the truth is the outcomes aren't going to make you happy. Remember, you can be happy in any situation, in any circumstance, but it's this process of growing and changing and becoming. That's what happiness is really all about. And so it's about becoming a different person. And the way to become that different person is, again, to be aware of why you're doing the things that you're doing. Look at the thoughts and beliefs that are driving those behaviors. Make sure that your thoughts and beliefs are based on truth or principle. If they're not, be willing to let those thoughts and beliefs go and replace them with thoughts and beliefs that are based on truth, and then become that person. And as I become that person, my behavior will automatically change. When I'm trying to make myself change, I'm not there yet. And so even if I do make that change, so if you want to make those changes in your life, it's important to remember that unless you change, the change is only going to be temporary, because the beliefs, the underlying beliefs that you have, if those don't change, eventually they will begin to surface again and you'll return to your old patterns of behavior. A quick example of that is just think about dieting. If you have ever tried to diet or you know somebody that has, dieting doesn't work because it doesn't change the underlying belief of my eating habits and my exercise habits. It does it on a temporary basis until the person achieves the outcome that they want. But then you go back to your old beliefs and your old behaviors and you end up with your old results. So this is the key to making sustainable, long-term change in your life, and that is changing who you are, and that will result in consistency and real change. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, and if you'd like to know more about who we are and what we do, visit our website at principlebasedliving.com. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, be sure to follow me here.